virtual meeting of the South West Wales Corporate Joint Committee Overview and Scrutiny Subcommittee. I am Councillor Tim Bowen and I will be chairing the meeting. Can we just ask for some housekeeping rules that you keep your phone switched off? If you do need to ask any questions, if you could raise your hands, please. And just for everybody who weren't in the pre-briefing, we will be doing a 2-minute silence at 11 o'clock. So if I do interrupt you mid-session asking a question or the officer giving a presentation, please don't take it personal. It's just that we're coming up to the time for the 2-minute silence. Right, I'll move on to agenda item 2, declarations of interest. Are there any declarations? I can't see any. No. Oh, sorry, Alison.
No, I don't see any, Chair. Just going to confirm.
Okay, thank you. Agenda item 3, minutes of the previous meeting. These were done on the 2nd of July and a year for accuracy today. I know that Councillor Howlett needs to add something to it. So if you'd just like to come in and give your presentation on that, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yes, at the meeting, obviously, I very much appreciate that minutes aren't verbatim. We discussed a number of items on the transport plan on page 7 is the bit I'm talking about. When we discussed the Newgale plan, which is the road that is proposed in Pembrokeshire's big scheme, shall we say, both myself and Councillor Michael John highlighted that the proposed scheme was not universally supported and had attracted local opposition, and that there was an alternative scheme that had been proposed at a much reduced cost. So what I'll be proposing is to add to the minutes, 2 Pembrokeshire County Councillors highlighted that the proposed Newgale scheme had attracted local opposition and an alternative scheme had been proposed at a much reduced cost. So I'm happy to propose that if anyone wants to second me. Thank you.
Yes, happy to second, Chair.
Okay, if everybody's happy with that, then I'll accept the proposal. If anybody's against it, could they raise their hands, please?
I don't see any indications, Chair, so those minutes are approved with the amendment.
Okay, thank you, Alison. Right, moving on to item 4. I know there was members missing from the pre-briefing, so if you do have any questions, please raise your hand and I'll fetch you in. Right, agenda item 4, regional investment strategy, pages 11 to 14. Do officers have anything to add, please? No?
No, Chair, I think we can move straight to any questions.
Yeah, any questions on item 4, please? No? Okay.
Councillor Michael John, sorry, Chair, Councillor Michael John has indicated.
Right, sorry, Mike, a little bit late coming up then.
Oh, it's okay. I appreciate you've got a couple of screens, perhaps, and you can't see everybody at the same time. Just for transparency, really, on page 13 of the report, it says it should be noted that procurement of the chosen provider will be undertaken by Carmarthenshire County Council. Just for transparency, why was it decided Carmarthenshire and not any of the other councils?
Helen?
Thank you, Chair. Helen Morgan, Carmarthenshire County Council. Carmarthenshire is the lead authority for the economic well-being theme under the CJC. That's why we undertook, with that in mind, that's why we undertook the procurement for the regional investment strategy. However, all the other 3 authorities were involved in the procurement exercise and were involved in the evaluation panel and had voting rights on the evaluation day in the panel. So all 4 local authorities were part of the decision-making process.
That's fine. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. If there's no more questions, this is report is for noting, so we note the report. Moving on to agenda item 5, Regional Economic Delivery Plan Mid-Term Review, pages 15 to 88. Do officers have anything to add? No. Oh, sorry,
Right.
Philip
Sorry,
Holmes.
Chair. Yeah, Phil Holmes, Swansea Council, Head of Planning and Regeneration. Yeah, just to say that the piece of work that's been done, set out in the report, is an important review. The original strategy was produced back in 2021, as we were in the teeth of the COVID pandemic, and I think it's good practice with these strategies to review them periodically. So that's what we've done, if you like, 4 or 5 years into the strategy. The good news is that the strategy is still the right strategy. It's the right priorities, the right missions. We have augmented it with some new activities as well. And alongside this strategy, there is a delivery action plan of all the programs and projects that are either being delivered or being worked up or in the pipeline. So that's where the actual benefits of this will arise. But the strategy is, as I say, intact and suitable for the next few years in terms of the region's economic wellbeing progress. So I just wanted to set the context for that, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much, Philip. We'll move on to members' questions now. Councillor Percy.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, just a couple of things from me, mainly observations, if I'm honest, but in relation to connectivity and transport, and I know there's something we've picked up in this document previously as well. It is welcome to see that sort of greater emphasis has been put on the South West Wales Metro in this document, than previously that was there. A couple of things I wanted to just pick up upon that is it quite rightly identifies the potential benefits from an access to employment and economic activity point of view. I think the other thing we need to consider in the mix of that is access to training as well, because that is a key building block on the road to employment and good employment. And I just think that's an important thing to acknowledge within the report in terms of that. And the other thing I just wanted to say I agree with, and we'll pick it up in another agenda item later on, is just that general principle about an ambitious approach to public transport investment generally. I mean, it talks about rail and the metro scheme, which is great, but we know there's a big case for public transport investment, and we don't seem to be acknowledging the bus franchising work in this particular document. And considering we're the first region that's going to be having that bus franchising, it feels I absolutely haven't picked up a reference to it in the document, perhaps I've missed it, but it feels timely to sort of pick that up really as an opportunity to drive that forward as well. Diolch.
Thank you. Philip, would you like to come back?
Yeah, I think those points are well made, totally agree. And this time around, we have strengthened the document, as has been mentioned, in terms of the transport and the connectivity. We've also, in terms of introducing some new what we call underpinning fundamentals, we've tried to embrace the priorities around employment and skills, sustainable connectivity, and sites and premises, which I think all help really in terms of positioning the region and having this this coherent approach to economic well-being. And like I said as well, the real sort of strength of this document, yes, it sets the strategy and the direction of travel, but underpinning it is an action plan, a delivery plan, in terms of the projects and programs, and they will all link across in terms of all of those things that we talked about, whether it's developing sites and premises or stronger connections, or more private sector investment. So it will cut right across everything that we're trying to achieve in the region.
Okay, thank you for that. Sean, you happy with that? Okay, thank you. Councillor John?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just supporting that really, and I picked up in and highlighted on page 33 and 34 the paragraphs 2.14 and 2.15 of the report, where it says fewer people are economically active than before the pandemic, and then 2.15 goes on, despite the evidence of the labour market capacity, the skills shortages and reported bottlenecks are widespread. I think it's important to try and get some actions in place for these skills shortages with the Freeport and other big ventures which are coming up. It's really a case of getting local people, if you like, trained up for that in advance, perhaps possibly, rather than have to import people as and when. It is a huge opportunity for West Wales, and I'd like to see some confirmation of the investment into training and raising that skill shortage or lowering that skill shortage so that local people can get onto the market of jobs with that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor John. Would you like to come back, Philip?
Yeah, again, I have to agree on that one. I think in the past, in years gone by, maybe economic strategies have focused on creating wealth, which obviously is still a major focus for us. But I think the distribution of wealth and having an equality in terms of everyone being able to take part in that sort of economic success is just as important. And with things like the Freeport and this new opportunity that we've got in terms of this green energy sector, I think it widens up the opportunities for people in a way that we haven't seen for a very, very long time. And our role really, I think, is to be the facilitator for that and to ensure that people can take part. And there will be projects linked to that moving forward. So yes, I totally agree. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. You happy with that, Councillor John?
Yeah, thank you. It's good to have that confirmation. And I mean, I've been a councillor for a while now, and going back 10 years or so ago, I was chair of the Economy Overview Scrutiny Committee in Pembrokeshire, and we had visited the college to see what they were doing for improving skills, and with the offshore wind and other renewables planned for the area, it was very proactive at the time. So I'm just happy to have that confirmation that will continue right across the area, not just Pembrokeshire, of course, but right across the area. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. If there's no more questions, can I ask, please, for a proposer and a seconder?
Happy to propose, Chair.
Thank you. Can I have a seconder, please? Councillor John, happy to second, yeah?
Yeah, sorry, I put my hand up. Appreciate it again. I'll do the hands on screen next time.
No problem. If there's any members that wish to abstain, could they please raise their hand?
I see no abstentions, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Members, sorry, this recommendation is supported. Thank you very much for that one. Moving on to item 6, Q2 financial monitoring 25-26, pages 89 to 96. Officers, do you have anything to add?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Good morning, everybody. I'm quite happy to talk you through the report. So this is for the first quarter of the financial, sorry, the second quarter of the financial year. There's been very little change since Q1. I think additional £9,000 worth of expenditure, and that was some of that was to do with the advertising for the Chief Operating Officer for the CJC. So we're still projecting a surplus, or we're now projecting a surplus at year end of 323,000. I think last quarter, sorry, was 331, 33, something like, roughly £9,000-10,000 difference. So our surplus at year end is now projecting to be around about the 1.345 million. So 1.35 million. We don't know exactly the interest we'll be earning on our balance at the moment, but it's increasing, whereas we originally did budget for a decrease in the surplus at year end. So there's a few reasons why we are increasing the surplus. We're having sorry, just grab my notes up, sorry. So for the support services, we still project an underspend of about 49,000 for the senior accountant post, which is being vacant due to basically not being required at this point in time. We also have in the subcommittee expenditures, there's a underspend in the planning and program management category of about 74,000 for the year. But there is some activity being undertaken by the subcommittees now, and the planning subcommittee has appointed a strategic planning officer for the year. That person started in September, but this is in part being funded by the planning and program management line within the subcommittee budget. The regional investment strategy is being procured. 40,000 of this will be funded through the economic subcommittee budget, and the remaining, I believe, about 30k will be funded by the consultancy and specialist advisor budget within the regional management office. And then going on to the regional management office, we're looking at an overspend of about 59k. This is in large part due to the chief operating officer expecting to start January, February time this year. We have additional expenditure for the UK Reef event and an event for the region green economy event as well this year. You'll notice that we have 2 grants this year, which we did not know about when we set the budget. So there's 200,000 from Welsh Government to support the capacity and development of the governance arrangements with the CJC, and a further 200,000 to complete the regional transport plan. So that's all I've got to say on this report, Chair. I'm quite open for any questions.
Okay, thank you, Stephen. Members, do you have any questions? Councillor Percy?
Yeah, 2 questions from me. First, just in relation to the finance officer role. I mean, I think we've picked this up in previous scrutiny sessions. Yep. When do we anticipate that role is going to be required?
Oh, thank you for the question. It's not going to be required this year. We're going to be setting the budgets for next year later on this financial year. So there's a workshop later on this month, I believe, and we are looking at. It's going to be mainly down to the requirements of the subcommittees. So this year they are starting to spend, but next year all indications I've had is that there's going to be substantially more expenditure coming through, and there's the potential of, I think, 24 million transport grants flowing through the CJC to be dispersed to local authorities. So that then may require this accountancy post to be then fulfilled.
Okay, thank you. I think, you know, just to, I suppose, express the sort of concern we've expressed before is making sure these budgets are accurate. And,
yeah,
you know, for this financial year, if we weren't anticipating that officer post, it should not have been budgeted for. You know, I remain firm on that view for all of these budget lines. You know, we need to make sure that it is accurate and we're not unnecessarily building reserve sort of in an underhand manner, let's say, because it needs to be straightforward to the levying authorities where the money's going. And I don't particularly think it's great if we're putting something down for a post that we know we're not going to employ, sure, and then putting that money in reserves. It's just from a transparency point of view. But no, we've made that point before, so yeah, but I've got to make it again. And then just on the grants. Obviously, it's really welcome we've had those grants. I remember then there was a lot of uncertainty in some previous meetings about how some of this work would be funded. Have we had any indication from Welsh Government about revenue grant support going forward into future financial years? Just thinking ahead, some of that budget planning and maybe those levy rates that we're going to be putting on authorities in future years. It'd be really helpful, I'm sure, wouldn't it, for everybody to know what those grants might look like. So have we had any indication?
Yes, we have, Councillor. So for the £200,000 capacity and capability grant, we know that's for this current financial year and 2 further financial years. And then for the RTP grant, currently is 200,000. Next year it reduces to 100,000, and then I think that is going to be carrying on £100,000 per year going forward. But I'm not too sure about the future years after next year. But the indications are, I think it is 100,000 going forward.
Okay, that is useful to know, and I think it'll be interesting when we come to the next year's budget setting to see how that impacts the overall picture. Diolch.
Okay, Sean. Thank you. Councillor John?
Yeah, I won't repeat it because I was going to mention those grants. I mean, it's been a school governor. It's always a shame when grants come in late in the year. You don't budget for at the start of the year, and it seems that Welsh Government are doing the same with this, because had we known that money was coming earlier on, then the budget might have been different. And that brings me on to my other point, which I've highlighted, and it's very, very small print, sorry, but it's on page 95. And we're going on to the strategic development plan after, but it says there's a possibility of 400,000 to accelerate and incentivize the SCP preparation. I mean, if my figures, which we had quoted previously, that 400,000 won't scratch the surface of the total cost of doing that. So I guess what I'm asking, I guess, is how serious is this being taken? It seems to be going very, very slow steps without any sort of indication that it will be funded. Perhaps somebody could say what the total funding would be, and are we likely to see any money coming from that in the future? And I appreciate it's on the agenda later on. It's just this was mentioned in the budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. If I can respond. So that 400,000, I think we've had indication that there is two other corporate joint committees within Wales have been allocated that funding between the two of them. I believe Wendy Walters, the Chief Executive, has gone back to Welsh Government to seek further clarity on this funding. That it seems that we've potentially missed out on that, so that we believe that's not right. We require the funding to continue with our STP, so we wait and see whether Welsh Government get back to us with that. But for future years, at the moment, there's no funding being made available by the Welsh Government. So we are in the process of looking at the budgets for next year, seeing how much each subcommittee requires. Obviously, we've got a substantial amount of reserves, so we will be looking to use that potentially, depending on what the joint committee decides, to then fund, say, the SDP going forward.
Okay with that, Councillor John?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I won't drag it out now. There are points we've raised previously about funding, so I won't drag that out now. Thank you.
Okay, Kirsty, I'll fetch you in.
Thank you. Just to bring some clarity to the funding, I've been supporting officers as well in linking in Welsh Government in terms of the funding grants that we were notified of in June of this year. So in terms of the delivery agreement, incentivised grant funding, it still remains that 400,000 remains eligible to us. Stephen was quite right in saying that it's been suggested by Welsh Government that both Ambition North Wales and Cardiff Capital Region will be able to access that £400,000 grant. But we haven't been issued with any of the formal criteria of how to bid or claim that grant. So our Chief Executive, Wendy Walters, is currently engaging with Welsh Government in terms of getting that clarity. And officers of Welsh Government as well have advised that there may be alternative funding available. So I think the good news story is that we'll cover in the next few items that we are progressing with the delivery agreement. So there's nothing stopping us being eligible to submit a claim under that grant for 400,000. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Kirsty. Has any members got any more questions? No, okay. This report is for noting, so we note the report. Moving on to agenda item 7, annual return 24-25, pages 97 to 108. Officers, do you have anything to add?
Yes, Chair, quite happy to go through this one. So this is for the previous financial year, so the year ending 24-25. You can see there's two elements to the report. So Appendix A shows the outturn for the year, and Appendix B is the actual annual return, which summarises the outturn into the required format. So this annual return has been signed off by Chris Moore, the Section 151 officer, and following the Governance and Audit Subcommittee in September, the Chair of the Audit and Governance Subcommittee has signed this off as part of their delegated responsibility. The Auditor General for Wales has also signed off the annual return. So if you look at Appendix A, I think it's on page 102, this then shows the outturn for the year. So you'll be aware on the 23rd of January 2024, the budget was set at 615k with a levy from each of the constituent authorities, and we reduced this levy by 10%, utilising reserves. Well, this is what we plan to do with the budget. So it was agreed at that joint committee in January that the CJC would also maintain the level of the levy for the current and 2 financial years using some of these reserves. So you can see the outturn. We had a total underspend of 332k. It's very similar to what we projected for this year in coincidence almost. So it was an overspend in the accountable body by about 2k. This was due to external audit fees, incorporating the performance audit within their scope. Support services, again, as you rightly point out earlier, so the senior accountant post was vacant again last year, so we had an underspend of 47k here. And the subcommittees, there was no expenditure last year, so we had an underspend of 220,000. So it's taken some time for these subcommittees to establish themselves and their workloads. However, you see this year, 25-26, they have started to spend, and it is anticipated that in 26-27 this will progress even further. And then finally, in the regional management office budget, we had an underspend of 73k. We did not use 53k worth of consultancy and specialist advisor work, and there was underspends in translation and some other categories such as printing and ICT. So at the bottom, you can see of the appendix, you can see how we got to our total reserves of 1.176 million. So we had the brought forward balance from the previous year of 843k, adding in the underspend within the year and interest of 55k on a balance gave us the 1.176 million. So the actual annual return starts on page 103. So just for context, for joint committees with income and expenditure below 2.5 million, the requirement is that accounts are prepared in the form of an annual return, and at the moment we are well below that £2.5 million requirement level. So the annual return split into 4 sections. So we've got the accounting statement, annual governance statement, then we've got the committee approval and certification, and then the annual internal audit report. So if we start with the annual accounting statement, so this categorizes the income and expenditure. As I mentioned in the outturn previously, that this categorizes into the required categories for the annual return. It's basically the same figures, but in different order. So as I said, total expenditure was in the 378,000, and we raised levies of 556k. We also had a Welsh Government grant of 100,000 for the RTP, and we earned interest of 55k. In this section, there's a statement of balances. I'll just run through a few points just to give some clarification. So in point 8, debtors, we had debtors of 84.5k. So this sounds a lot, but it relates to the Welsh Government grant for the RTP. The grant was, I said, 100k, and in year we received 15.5k. So that debtor is the remaining 84.5k from Welsh Government that we hadn't received by the end of the financial year. We have received it now though. And then creditors, point 10, is 117,000. So this 100,000, this relates to the RTP reimbursement to Swansea County Council. Swansea are the lead for the RTP. They incur all the expenditure, and we, as a CJC, essentially passport that £100,000 grant funding from Welsh Government to the council. So we couldn't make that payment until we received the income. So therefore, that is a creditor sat there. The other 17,000 of creditors relates to some small invoices, including the external audit fees. As I mentioned earlier, the balance 1.176 million is made up of the underspend in the year and previous year's balance. The annual governance statement at page 104. So this provides a CJC's response to the governance of the committee and is similar to previous year's response. So in here, we acknowledge that we have effective financial management with systems of control and fraud prevention. And this has again been signed off by Chris Moore and the chair of the Governance and Audit Subcommittee. On page 106 is the signed Audit Wales certificate, providing a clean and unqualified audit opinion, noting there were no matters identified and no recommendations were made. And then finally, there's the internal audit report, again highlighting no matters were noted and no recommendations were made. So thank you, Chair. That's my report, and I'm open for any questions if needed.
Okay, thank you, Stephen. Do any members have any questions? No, I can't see any. So this report is for noting, so we note the report. Moving on to agenda item 8, Strategic Development Plan update, pages 109 to 112. Officers, do you have anything to add? Kirsty?
Thank you. I can see that Nicola Pierce possibly isn't on the call, so I'm happy to give a brief update. In terms of progress with the SDP and the need to progress with the delivery agreement, CJC agreed and considered 2 options at this meeting on 27th of May this year. And they decided and approved the option to progress with the delivery agreement and resource it accordingly. So as of the 1st of September this year, we're pleased to make an appointment through a secondment from Neath Talbot, and we've made that appointment now, and the ladies in post. So we're progressing with the delivery agreement. Updates will be brought back to this committee and in the interim to the relevant subcommittee as well. But we are aiming and we're on target to submit the delivery agreement by the 31st of March 2026 then. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Kirsty. Councillor John, I know you had a question.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And firstly, it's good to see the post filled. All I wanted, again, for a bit of clarity, really, is a bit of information around the recruiting process, and it's absolutely no reflection on whoever is in post. I don't know the person. I haven't seen a name, so it's absolutely no reflection there. But I just wonder, was it advertised and how many people applied, and what was the sort of selection process? I just want to make sure, for our benefit, really, that we are confident that it was sort of a broad offer, which there was a lot of interest, perhaps, and not just somebody slotted into a post. So just a little bit of clarity around that, please.
I'm afraid I haven't got that detail, but I can liaise with the relevant officers and provide the subcommittee with that detail. But again, as it is a regional appointment, all partners to the region, so that would include the 4 local authorities and the 2 national parks, that they would be aware of that position in the first instance. But we certainly can forward on any detail that you require.
Okay, thank you. And if I can come back, Chair, that's the reassurance I wanted, really, that it was available for everybody and a fair selection process, rather than somebody just sort of moved across into that post without any sort of due diligence to the post, really. So, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor John. Councillor Percy.
I don't have a question on this item, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Does any other member have any questions? Okay, I can't see any. So this report is for noting, so we note the report. Agenda item 9, subcommittee highlighted report, pages 113 to 118. Officers, do you have anything to add? No, I can't see anything. Oh, sorry, Kirsty.
Thank you, Chair. I'm happy to take this report, and again, we got various officers on the call, and I'm happy for them to feed in as they may, really. So this is the first sort of report that we've put forward, really. It's to provide committees really with a general overview of how we're performing in terms of each subcommittee. So the purpose is to provide an overview on the progress we've made against satisfying our wellbeing objectives. And the aim really is to bring this to committee really on no fewer than the quarterly basis as a point, really. But in terms of recommendations, we've taken this to CJC on the 21st of October. and the indication really is one to give a general overview and update of where we are in terms of our functions, and most importantly is to gain feedback in terms of how you feel the update works for yourselves in terms of the template used, and anything that you feel as suggestions as we could improve things really. So those are the recommendations of what we'd like. But in terms of just giving an overview, if I can just draw your attention to item subsection 4, then risk and issues assessment. It covers really 4.1, the investment strategy. So we're now underway. We've commissioned a consultant to undertake that piece of work, and I know we got Helen Morgan on the call here, so we're hoping that that piece of work will be completed by the end of November in readiness for the investment summit. So again, the findings of that piece of work will come back to subcommittee. In terms of achievements, in terms of the RTP and the 4.2, again, we've satisfied the submission date for the RTP. That included the Regional Transport Delivery Plan as well, so that was submitted in July, and we had formal confirmation that as of the 25th of September, it has been approved by Welsh Government, and it will become effective from that date then. So the RTP is now available on our CJC website, and we've been working with Welsh Government in terms of communications and publications. And as I mentioned there, in terms of the STP under 4.3, that we are making progress. We engage through our Pan Wales CJC group as well, where various officers and directors of Welsh Government are attending. So any update and sort of good practice shared throughout the CJCs are conveyed at that group. So as I've already mentioned, we're on par really to satisfy the submission date for that draft delivery agreement for the 31st of March 2026, and we hope to bring that update back to committee in January then. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Christy. Does any member have any questions? No, I can't see any. This report is for noting, so we note the report. Moving on to agenda item 10, final draft South West Wales Regional Transport Delivery Plan Year 1, Programme Appendix 3. Year 1 private. Moving into 119-150. Can I remind members that Appendix 3 to this report is private. If there are any questions on Appendix 3, we'll have to move into private session. We will be taking advice on the officers whether we need to go into private. Officers, do you have anything to add to this report?
Yeah, if I could, I'll just give a brief introduction and hand over to Lee White, who's been helping us pull together the plan. This is the next iteration, really. As as you're aware, we've had the regional transport plan itself approved, and as part of that, the next functions were to produce a regional transport delivery plan and a year 1 investment plan for that. So, but what I'll do is I'll hand over to Lee to run through the work obviously across the region and pulling that together and some of the key points. If that's okay with you, Chair?
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, good morning, Chair. Good morning, everybody. And thanks for the introduction there, Stuart, as well. I think if I can just clarify, Chair, if I may, just a couple of points as we've gone through. As Christy has highlighted, the Regional Transport Plan is now a live document. So there's been a right around to chief officers to highlight that fact that the policy section is now live, and we should be taking that into account in, for instance, planning decisions and so on. So each of the 4 authorities and the 2 national parks have had notice that the regional transport plan is now live, and I think that will also aid the discussion that I think Philip from Swansea was referring to earlier on about the regional economic strategy being refreshed as well, Chair. So there is a sound transport related policy base that links into that now. Just to clarify, if I may, before I make some more detailed remarks, Chair, just to clarify the comments with Councillor Percy about the grant situation. I appreciate that obviously there was a an issue there about recruitment, and Stephen as well mentioned this. Just to confirm that grants will be paid to the individual authorities for transport matters in 26-27. It's only after there's been a change in the regulations, and it's likely to occur for funding in 27-28, which will be the first year of CJC, the funding being channeled through the CJC. So there's some statutory process the Welsh Government need to go through to allow that to occur. So I think the current type arrangements where the transport grants are passed to the individual authorities will continue at least from April the 1st next year for that financial year. So just to clarify that point there, we have had notification of that from Welsh Government. If I may, Chair, I think you've seen the report before, and I know there will be questions about the detail and whether we move into the private session or not. I'd just like to highlight 3 things, if I may, Chair, that we said we'd give you a verbal report on in the meeting, rather than dwelling on the detail, if I may. First of all is this issue where there's an opportunity to not only discuss year 1 funding, but also to discuss potential funding rolling into years 2 and 3 of the Regional Transport Plan's 5-year programme of delivery. Officers are still considering that in some detail, but the officers are working on the principle that there are a small number of schemes around the region that will be half constructed in the first year of the programme, and by definition we would want to finish those, rather than leaving them half built and being subject to further budget rounds. So clearly that's the immediate priority, is to finish those half built schemes that we've started in year 1, and to roll those and to continue those into years 2 and 3 and complete them. Clearly there will be a small number of other schemes that may roll across as well, but I think that's the main focus, is to get the schemes that are underway in year 1 completed in that. The second point I'd make, Chair, is there's discussion in the report about a reclassification of schemes, and this has been a Welsh Government issue about trying to identify internally resources to issue advice, support, etc. Welsh Government have now reassured us, Chair, that that will not affect our prioritisation of schemes. So in effect, if we set a scheme as a high priority, reclassifying it from either resilience or as a multimodal transport scheme to a highway type scheme will not penalise us. So they have we have got the reassurance we were seeking on that particular point there. So I think the reclassification is seen at this stage by Welsh Government officials as an administrative issue as opposed to an issue of substance. So we can give you that reassurance. The final matter, and I have been asked by Welsh Government officials to confirm that all the budget numbers, both in the public report and the private report, which we may wish to discuss separately, are subject to decisions by Welsh ministers. They're subject to the confirmation of the draft budget that was issued last week, etc. As you would expect in any grant situation, the Cabinet Secretary reserves the right to basically run his eye over this and then produce that final approval and the grant settlement letters and such like early next year. So in terms of the additional funds, Chair, this is potential additional funds again. Once again, there's no guarantee these funds will appear. It's part of the budget setting process that's going on in Welsh Government at the moment, so there's no certainty. The officers are going to recommend to the main CJC Chair that, first of all, any additional funding that does arrive, 50% of that is now going to be dedicated to making the breadth of those schemes that are in the plan on a regional basis, making the breadth larger, in other words, covering more ground, but also putting some of that money into the metro, the local element, the regional elements of the metro. We feel that there's a significant opportunity there to actually scope out what metro means in more detail to the region and actually do some of the detailed work that's necessary to bring those metro proposals forward. Now, obviously, we're appreciative that that a lot of that is reliant on Welsh Government, particularly on the rail side for the Metro, but there are a number of activities we can undertake locally and investments we can undertake regionally and locally that will actually support that bigger picture. So officers are very keen that 50% of any additional funding is put into those regional schemes and Metro related schemes as well. The other 50%, officers are going to recommend to the CJC chair that that is used to accelerate delivery of the schemes that are already in the list that you will have seen in Appendix 2. And obviously, we're quite conscious there that there's been some the budget issues that we can perhaps discuss later if we wish. That the budget issues have caused some of those schemes to be pared down somewhat. So actually, we do believe that the second call on any additional funding should be to increase the delivery rate of those in effect. May not be an increase in scope in some of those, but we do believe we can increase the rate of delivery. So I'll just highlight those matters, Chair. Obviously appreciate you may want to move into private session to discuss the detail of schemes and budgets and so on. But I think I've covered all the matters there that were outstanding in the report. And as I said, it is a fluid picture at the moment, given the Welsh Government's budget setting process. I think on the positive note, we do now have the process from the Welsh Government in play for claiming the grants and so on. That has now been formalised and finalised. So we are aware of what officers need to do at particular points in the process. And just a final observation, if I may, Chair, the applications for the secondment post for the regional coordinator on transport matters that will work alongside Christie and colleagues at CJC level, they closed last week, and we have had a small number of applications from colleagues around the region, so they're being assessed at the moment, and we'll obviously report back through Christie on that particular matter once an appointment's made. Is there anything else, Stuart, if I may just impose on you? I think I've covered all the key points there.
I think no, on that, Billy. I think you've covered all the key points, so thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you both for that report. Right, we'll now take questions on the report on Appendix 1 and 2 only. Councillor Percy, I think you had a question.
Yeah, I've got a few questions on this, Chair. Diolch. Thanks both for the sort of introduction there as well and clarifying a few things. And perhaps I'll work through some of those points to begin with, if that's okay. And just for absolute clarity, in terms of that potential additional funding, and you mentioned Metro, are we talking about the South West Wales Metro proposal there, or are we talking about something else called Metro? I just want to be absolutely clear.
No, it will be the South West Wales Metro, Councillor Percy, but obviously this solely relates to the more regional and local schemes rather than the main rail elements of the scheme, which are of the proposal, which is obviously Welsh Government driven rather than being driven by the region, as you'll recall.
So again, just to pick up on that, so in terms of any funding that we might allocate towards that, we are sort of drawing a line between some of the stuff that we see as Welsh Government's remit and some of the stuff we see as our remit. Is that what you're saying there?
Yes, indeed. I think the guidance requires us to do that. The RTP guidance is very clear where the dividing line is. As you may recall from the RTP document, Councillor Percy, there was an appendix that listed those national schemes of importance to us. That has now moved into the main approved RTP document. So there is visibility of those national schemes, if I can call them that, within the RTP. But Welsh Government have been particularly emphatic that the rail schemes and by implication trunk road schemes as well, obviously less important to Metro, I guess, but that they are their responsibility and they will deliver in their timescales rather than through the regional transport plan. So yeah, rather frustrating, I'm sure, but I think there is clarity there. There is a clear line, dividing line, as you say.
Yeah, that is really useful for us to know. And I think the only thing I'd probably ask on that, I mean, going forward, is that I expect we will have dialogue with the Welsh Government over that particular issue and particular project. But it'll be very useful for us to be kept abreast where Welsh Government are in terms of their ambition to deliver some of that work on their side, because obviously we will need to dovetail some of this work. For us with our political hats on, we need to know where we need to push as well. So it's useful for me to know that some of this sits outside of the regional envelope there. So thank you for that clarity. Just picking up then around this potential additional funding more generally. I mean, that the idea that perhaps that's even being considered, I think, is a good thing. There's some level of ambition there, perhaps, to see, well, okay, what could a little bit of additional funding do? And I think the idea of putting that towards some of those regional cross-boundary schemes and fleshing those out a bit more is a good idea. So I just want to I agree with that. Then just coming back then to sort of the funding more generally, and I know there's been a lot of discussion around what the overall level of funding is with the amalgamation of these grants, and I wondered what officers' sort of summary of that would be, because you know, this will be the first year where these grants get amalgamated, and it'd be useful if you could just give us a flavour of what that looks like compared to perhaps how the grants were previously.
One for Stuart,
Yeah.
I think. But,
Well, yeah. They're not as high as we would have liked them to be, I think it's fair to say. We were initially working, I think, with indicative figures, potentially with a 1.5 uplift of about 39 million was the sort of figure we had in our sort of, to a certain extent, optimistic sights. A couple of factors, I guess, have come into play. The kind of well, we're now working with 24, but with the potential for other funding sources. We want to make as strong a play for the additional funding sources as possible. We don't want them to be limited to burn schemes or anything in terms of which have been carried out in South East and North Wales. We want them to be, you know, considered in terms of on a, you know, across Wales basis. The mechanism that's been used to calculate the grants is based on road length, which has not been used previously with transport funding. It tends to have a stronger sort of focus on population. So yeah, we certainly would have liked to have worked with more funding, but we've had to have a lot of discussions to look at how we prioritise that. But it's fair to say we cannot be as ambitious as we would have liked to have been with higher levels. So we've had to have a lot of discussions as officers to bring that back. But hopefully with representations and encouragement, we you know, maybe we'll get sort of higher levels of funding. I think that's probably where I should draw a line. I don't know if there's anything on the mechanics, Lee, you want to mention?
I think I've already highlighted in response to Councillor Percy's earlier agenda item comment this issue where the grants will be paid to the local authorities in the next financial year, but then the year after the CJC will be the custodian of the grants in effect. So there is another interim stage that we've got to navigate. And I think in fairness, the only challenge that's created, as Stuart, is obviously where there's a regional scheme which has got a number of initiatives spread across the region, is actually then trying to divide that up so the individual authorities get an equitable share of the activity under that particular sort of overall scheme heading. So, but that's been done, and I think we are in a good place, Councillor Percy, in terms of, you know, Welsh Government have been aware of some of the discussions that have took place. So I don't think the programme that we're proposing for year one will come as a surprise to Welsh Government officials. So I think, you know, we do have TFW support as well. I think they see the challenges we faced also, and I think, you know, there is common ground there that this is very much on a no surprises basis to the centre.
Okay, thank you. I think, yeah, that's, yeah, it's what I believe the situation to be. Sorry, Stuart, did you have something else to add?
Yeah, it was really just the only thing I'd add to it was the interest in I guess the Welsh Government elements of the metro. The sort of, you know, we're very much kind of we deem it more local metro, but they're complementary to the delivery, but it's those wider things. We'll certainly have the discussion about how to best brief. I know TFW were always keen to brief on What I would say on that one as well is when we look at rail, you know, and I'd be very keen for as much kind of briefing and understanding on that. We've got an extremely compelling case for rail investment in South West Wales. Probably, I would strongly believe it's a stronger than the rest of the rest of Wales, and we want to sort of make sure that kind of case is known as strongly as possible for not just in terms of Westminster and not just in terms of Welsh Government vote for, but on a Westminster basis to try and secure investment in the rail networks we have. We have not been invested, I guess, strongly through, you know, for many years. So I think there's a really strong case, and I'd like to get that sort of shouted out as strongly as possible. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, on that point, I think you know the CJC can be a vehicle, isn't it, to demonstrate what our ambition is, and what we might want to ask from some of those other partners. And I know it's sometimes harder, as you alluded to, for officers to sort of make some of those points that might be a little bit more politically loaded, but it is for us as members, and particularly for the members of the CJC itself, to maybe push for some of those slightly some of those asks. So just a couple more things that I wanted to pick up on. There was a point you raised, Stuart, which has left my brain, so I'll come back to that one if it comes back to me. But for the time being, the reclassification element here, and I think Lee, you picked up on this.
Indeed.
I just want absolute clarity here in terms of what is being said, because I've been a little bit concerned in terms of the maybe shift towards the kind of I'd say old way of thinking in terms of highway investment, and this paragraph made me feel like that this was more than an administrative change, and this was a signal to say that we're going in that direction. But I from what you said, Lee, I don't think it is that, but I just kind of need to press it a little bit more.
Yeah, so I mean, I think Councillor Percy, we were very concerned as an officer group about this, the fact that particularly resilience and also multimodal schemes, obviously, you know, there may be an element of highway improvement in those schemes, but clearly you could include bus priority, some active travel links, for instance, in a highway scheme. And I think, you know, even if we were building a road scheme or proposing a road scheme, it would include active travel and resilience matters as a matter of and bus priority where appropriate as a matter of course. I don't think there's any doubt about that in officers' minds, that the designs would need to obviously meet the active travel guidance in particular, but also be suitable for flood resilience and such like as well, so asset resilience. So I think in some ways, although we'd categorise these schemes in this way, the Welsh Government's initial view is to effectively categorise those two types of schemes primarily as highway schemes. What we've now received the assurance about is that, as you say, this is an administrative process, not a funding determination matter, because obviously the way the guidance for the regional transport plan is written at the moment, given the roads review issues and so on, the logic would say that you wouldn't get a substantial, if any, funding for a purely highways-based scheme. You know, so, you know, in theory, you would need to justify it through that wider canvas that I've just talked about, rather than just simply being a new road or a new road link, for example, or an improvement, substantive improvement to an existing road. So you would need to, as I say, paint that wider picture, I guess, in terms of having a successful application. So officials have assured us it's an administrative matter. What we are proposing to do, just at a technical level, we are proposing to highlight very strongly in the scheme descriptions the fact, although that it may be a highway scheme in Welsh Government terms and classification terms, that it is actually a public transport scheme, it is an active travel scheme, it is a resilience scheme, and actually bring that out front and centre in the descriptive material that we've got to supply to support the submission that's due at the end of the month. So the officers are working through that at the moment.
Can I interrupt, members, please? We just coming up, we've got a couple of seconds to 11 o'clock. and I'd like to ask you all to join us in and the nation in 2 minutes silence. I'll let you know when it starts, and I'd let you know when it finishes. Thank you. Okay, we start. Thank you all. Back over to, I think it was Lee.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and thank you for the reminder at 11 there. I would have carried on talking, unfortunately, but thank you for the prompt. I think I was just responding to Councillor Percy, if I recall, about the Welsh Government officials are seeing this reclassification matter as an administrative process at this stage. I think where we get to, Councillor Percy, is that yeah, they are advised, that they are clear that this is an administrative process, but obviously we do want to highlight those other schemes, scheme types, I think, and bring that to the fore in the descriptions, as I was highlighting just before we broke for the 2 minutes. So I think the officer group are content that that is satisfactory. Obviously, we'll continue to monitor the situation. And again, you know, as Stuart has indicated, there's ongoing dialogue with Welsh Government and TFW officials. And I think, you know, it's, you know, I think, Stuart, it is something that we'll be watching very closely, isn't it, over the coming weeks.
Sean, you happy with that?
I've got a few more questions, Tim.
Yeah, fine.
Yeah. Yes, just on that, you know, no, I appreciate that, and I mean, again, something I can say that maybe you can't is, you know, there's been, you know, definitely a change in tone between, you know, Lee Waters and Ken Skates, you know, from a ministerial point of view. So I think we all need to be mindful of that, and of course, you know, politically, we've got an election next year, and there's going to be implications on that as well, isn't it? And we've all got to sort of be mindful of that and what that does for the funding landscape, and what that means in reality for projects that will be delivered. So I remembered now what Stuart prompted me on, which was the road length being the funding, one of the indicators in terms of the funding allocation, which was a bit of a surprise to me as well. I'm not sure that is the best sort of metric to be using. It seems a little bit bizarre to me. Has there been any pushback on that? Are there any discussions happening around that funding allocation methodology? Because it does seem quite flawed, really, unless you're just looking at this through a point of view of maintaining a highway network, which is not what we're doing.
Yeah, well, I guess authorities were consulted as part of the grants modernisation process when it was being considered. We did make sort of representations then about, the mechanisms and things. It's, there's an acknowledgement that, if it's entirely population focused, then it can sometimes be slightly disadvantageous to the rural areas. But if it's road length based, then it can certainly, for transport funding, it can pose challenges, because the kind of transport funding generally is about the movement of people and goods in terms of on there. So the representations were made. My understanding is that's at present, that's what Welsh Government wish in terms of for the allocation to be. But it's fair to say it hasn't been it's meant a sort of slight disbenefit in terms of the Southwest region as a result of that. So, well, some of the regions have benefited from it. So, yeah, thank you.
Okay, that's something perhaps we can pick up as members, maybe, in terms of coming to the right formula, I suppose, and again, maybe there's some advice that perhaps could be provided by some officers, in due course, perhaps on what some of those options might look like. I've got one last point I want to make, Tim. If that's okay. And this isn't necessarily tackled within this item, but I think it's a really important thing in terms of regional transport, and that is, I've mentioned earlier, the bus franchising that's emerging, and something I'm trying to clarify, and we're looking at the base network in Scrutiny on Friday in Neath, Talbot. Councils already are paying revenue funding into the network at present. Welsh Government are obviously bankrolling the network to a large extent, and what I'm trying to understand is what the mechanism is going to be post bus franchising for us to add that additionality on top of the base network. And it seems like the region is the right place to do that. But of course, that requires conversations to happen in local authorities and as a region about what our ambition is for the bus network and how much money we're willing to put in and what the outcome of putting that money in might be. And this feels like a very good time to ask that question, because all of this network development work is happening right now. And there may be some things going on in the background that I'm not aware of. If anybody can enlighten me on that, I'd appreciate it. But if there isn't, this is me sort of saying we need to look at this, because from what I've seen from the current funding landscape, the base network in terms of the regional, across the region for the bus franchising is going to be marginally better than what we have now, but still nowhere near as good as it was 15 years ago when I was in college, which in itself was not fantastic then. So, we've got a long way to go to get to where we want to be. And currently a big regional disparity in terms of what local authorities contribute towards their network. Swansea have much better services in the evenings and weekends than Neath Talbot do, for example. And I'd love to see that. And I think we all know that harmonising that across the region is going to have huge benefits in terms of people being able to access employment. So I'm raising that question. If anybody can give me an indication, it would be really welcome. But I know there's been so much uncertainty over this process that so far I've not had a lot of clarity, but I'll hand it over to whoever wants to pick that up.
Yeah, I think there's no definitive answer as such. As you say, the base networks are the things that are being considered at the moment. it's a mammoth task that's been undertaken with the franchising. I'd like to say, yeah, we're fortunate to be the first out the blocks in terms of on there, but there's obviously a lot of challenges, a lot of things that in terms of process that Welsh Government have got to cover, and it's no mean feat to sort of do that. I would certainly hope that through the CJCs that we could look about how we kind of grow and expand on those networks and undertake, funding in terms of for pilots. I think some of the funding which we put in on infrastructure, continue to put in, and targeting for sort of for improving journey time reliability, for reducing the time that the buses are held in congested areas and different things, that will have a significant sort of positive impact. I think things like the alignment, better alignment between the train services and the bus services and things. This should all help grow kind of the passenger confidence, and I think we do need to look ahead about how we get the right level of investment to pump prime, and hopefully by funding improved services, then they can be self-funding over time. But I think that's what we're all trying to grapple with and understand. So it's very much on the radar. But we haven't got things sort of, I think, fully nailed down. Certainly that's my perspective on it. And as we're working with Welsh Government to understand how the funding will operate, how the continued decision on networks, and how we get the right kind of, I suppose, the right kind of investment for future growth on the public transport network. It's about trying to get that balance. Thank you.
You happy with all that, Sean?
If I can make one last comment for you,
Go on,
to the members, Chair. Thank you. I appreciate I've taken up a fair bit of time, but this is an area that I have a lot of interest in. Look, I think that the fundamental point here is about the difference that revenue funding can make to those services, isn't it? And one of the things that I found particularly interesting when I've taken a lot of interest in the bus franchising work is actually a relatively small amount of money can have a huge impact, particularly not for frequency, but add in evening services, weekend services. It doesn't cost a lot of money to do that when you've already got vehicles and drivers. So, small money, big impact. And I think what I'm saying is not let's have the base network from 2027 and then look at it later. I'm saying as a region, we need to do the work now to say, we think the base network isn't good enough. As a region, what does adding £200,000 of revenue look like? What does adding 300,000, 400,000 look like in terms of improving the network? And then what's the appetite in those local authorities as a CJC to fund that from day one? Because if we get this right from day one, we can have a big impact. If we get this wrong from day one, we're going to miss a huge opportunity to relaunch public transport in the region, because that's what this is going to be. There's going to be a huge amount of publicity. There's changes in ticketing, changes in branding, changes in routes. But if that's a flop, if it doesn't work, or if it's not as ambitious as we want it to be, we're going to miss that opportunity. So that's my push here, and is to say, let's get some of that work done now, have those conversations, have the conversations of region politically, because in all our local authorities, we're looking at budget setting, we're looking at priorities. This will need more money flowing through the system, and now is the point to do it. And I'll make one last thing, which is about self-funding.
Okay, make it the last one, Sean.
We should not expect public transport to be self-funding. It's nice when those services do wash their own face, but that's not the point of public transport, and we need to remember that there is a benefit to funding it, and we shouldn't expect not to do that. And I'll get off my soapbox now because I've kept you for a good while. Thanks, Chair, for allowing that.
No problem. Right, I'll fetch Councillor Howlett in as he was next to ask a question. You're on mute.
Sorry, I don't think I was. Apologies.
You haven't got a question, no?
No.
Okay, no problem. Okay. Councillor John?
Thank you, Chair. And I like following Councillor Percy because it spurs me into sort of some questions. But I think I fully agree with everything what Sean was saying. I mean, bus services are vital if you're going to get this encouragement off the roads for transport, safe walking routes, etc. But listening to all the talk about buses and how Swansea or Neath or Talbot have got different evening services, and the metro and all that sort of investment, you can see where it's going. It's rural areas like I covered in West Wales, parts of Pembrokeshire, and indeed Carmarthenshire and other rural areas, I dare say, in Neath Talbot or Carmarthenshire. We don't see that level of investment, and we haven't got a bus service. We got one in the village I live. There's one bus in the morning at 8:15 out of the village, and there's one back in at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Well, it doesn't really work for people trying to get to work, trying to do anything to encourage them. No safe routes for cycles, walking, anything like that. So it's about seeing the sort of equality and investment across the patch is what I keep raising every time, and I think I'm here to do that as I represent this area. So I will. But a few questions. We were back to the sort of major four schemes identified. It says officers identified the four major schemes, and we heard earlier on from Councillor Howlett about the Newgale one was controversial locally. So a question around that, not particularly that one, but if any of those major four schemes didn't take off for whatever reason, because there may be alternatives or whatever, where would the investment for that go? Would it go back to the county it was intended to go to, or does that go back into the central pot? Because I'm looking at the paragraph on page 125 where it says the current year one delivery list includes some schemes that will roll over to years 2 and 3 and the full regional transport delivery, etc. And we also heard a little bit earlier that from 26-27, I think the allocation of the grants comes to the CJC rather than individual councils. So bearing in mind on that, the list of schemes in Appendix 2, and very welcome schemes, of course, but they are all very targeted on certain areas, and I presume they've been put forward by offices in those areas as well. I mean, I could sort of list another 10 where I would say it's better to invest the money there. So if any of those schemes are sort of pulled or decided they're too expensive or don't get done for whatever reason, logistics, does that money then go back into the central pot to be allocated somewhere else, or is there a set amount per area? I think it's probably into the central pot myself, but just want a little bit of clarity on how that will work, because all the money could be invested in either one of the four counties, I would say, and still not scratch the surface of everything that needs to be done. So it really is about prioritization for me and where we spend that money. So I hope I made sense with that, but just any answers, thanks.
I'll let Lee come in on a bit more detail on this. I guess the challenge we have, and I suppose part of it's down to the funding and the ambition on there, is the collective sort of value of those four schemes would be completely dominating for the sort of programme at the levels of investment we've got. So I suppose, you know, there's certainly down there is an ambition to try and deliver, but if we haven't got sort of that clear funded, these will absolutely be funded and that's committed in terms of for the authorities for the region. But you know, if a developed scheme which was on the programme was unable to be delivered, then that would go back into the overall programme, and we'd look as a region about how we prioritise. But I think that's a general thing. But I think, Lee, I don't know if you've got any comments on that particularly. And apologies, I lost internet, so I missed Councillor Percy's last points on there. So hopefully there's nothing to pick up.
I think we got through that one, Stuart, in terms of that. But yeah, just to emphasise the point there, obviously it's a little more tricky in year one of the programme, Councillor John, because each authority will get the grant money directly from central government. So very much the initial thing in year one would be, if a scheme stalls, it would be for the authority in the first instance to look at their local programme and understand what could be done with it. Equally, when we get to years 2 of the programme, so 27, 28 and onwards, there will be the regional, the CJC will be the custodian of the overall fund. So there will be that ability to move the funding around the region to a degree. Obviously, there is a process for in-year amendments to the programme that we'd have to follow, where, once again, it's back to Welsh Government approvals, as we alluded to earlier. But there is a process to redistribute that money. It's not a use it or lose it scenario. the budget that we're working on, once that's finalised through the Welsh Government grant process, and the budgeting process will be the budget. And I think within the region, Stuart, I mean, I think it's just a matter of maintaining those sensible conversations about, if a scheme underspends in one local authority, can that money be redistributed? Equally, if a scheme overspends as well, I think there's a sensible conversation about how that is funded as well. But I think just in terms of the big schemes, we are very conscious that the national programme of schemes expires in 2027. So we do have an opportunity there. Once again, may come to Councillor Percy's point about lobbying, etc. There is a potential to move some of those bigger schemes as they evolve into that national programme, particularly some of the ones that are more related to those sort of strategic issues. They're big ticket items, but they're also strategic in nature as well. So the argument I think the officers would be wanting to create is that they become part of that national programme post 2027. Is that fair, Stuart? I think that's the state of play so far.
You're on mute, Stuart.
Yeah, thanks, Lee. Yeah, that's absolutely, covers, I think, the position and understanding. Obviously, with, guidelines and things could change over time as we go, but that's certainly the approach that we're working with at the moment.
Okay, Councillor John, you happy with that?
Yeah, I understand the answers, I think. I mean, I just, being, as I'm here representing Pembrokeshire, I feel I have to speak for areas I cover as well as being the region and the plan. And I think going back, I think when the Swansea Bay City region was set up, it was always the feeling right down west that we'd be forgotten in the far west. And it was all about Swansea Bay City region, where the emphasis should be on region and not the Swansea or the city bit. And I think it's the same with this. I mean, I certainly, if I'm on this committee in 2-3 years' time, will still be shouting for investment in West Wales, and I think that's what I should be doing. So it's just raising that, just for the equity across the area. I mean, we have got some desperate needs down west, with areas of extreme poverty. Some of the areas of child poverty in Pembrokeshire are higher than anywhere else in the country, and we need that investment as well anywhere else. And I just feel I need to shout for it when I get the opportunity. So if I could share, I'll like Councillor Percy, get off my soapbox now. Thank you.
Yeah, I leave Stuart come back in and answer your question.
Yeah, just really from a reassurance perspective, very much working as a region on this, and in advance of the funding and things. So, for example, the Milford Haven transport things, that's it was a big investment, which the whole region, Welsh Government approach to have a view, is this something, if they funded in year one, would we be comfortable as a region to continue with that allocation from the CJC? And the view was absolutely seen as a transport priority, and understanding that across the region. I think
Stuart, you're breaking up there.
Oh,
Stuart,
sorry.
you're breaking up.
Can you hear me? Oh, am I any better now? Can you hear me?
No.
Hello?
No, you're breaking up, Stuart.
Sorry. Apologies. Okay. It is about trying to get from across the region. Can you hear me? Sorry,
Any advice, Alison?
Can you speak again, Councillor? Sorry, Stuart.
Can you hear me now at all? No.
Yeah, that's a bit better, Stuart. If you leave the camera off, sometimes it helps the connection.
Okay, thank you. Internet's been flawless for ages. Decided to play up this morning. So yeah, it's basically a reassurance that we do view it as a programme across the region, and it is about not being equal spend in terms of not cutting into four. And sometimes it'll be more investment in one area than another. It's about having a fair distribution of investment to make sure that the transport interventions have an impact across the whole region and benefit the region. So, and making sure we have a strong voice for getting that funding to the region. Thank you.
Okay, lovely, thank you. You happy with that, Councillor John? Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Fully understand the sort of issues around population base and where you need big investment, but just that equity I wanted to reassurance on. So thank you, Stuart, for that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Cundy, sorry to keep you so long.
It's perfectly all right, Chair. Thank you very much. My concerns were really that is how much money we've actually got to invest. It was mentioned in the report that the officers are actually hoping for have around about 39 million to play with. They now have got 25, so we've lost 14 million. Is this affecting our plans? Do we actually have a sort of definitive plan anywhere that we can get an idea of where the money is being spent generally? I do sympathise very much with the colleagues in Pembrokeshire. Carmarthenshire also suffers from a very, very poor public transport service, really. It's interesting to hear about the metro. The point is, again, with that is there a sort of a definitive idea of where we're going with the metro on that, and then how it links in with the regional plans? And it's the same with the bus thing. We seem to have a sort of a government bus policy, and then we're going to have a council bus policy, and it's how all does this all interact and join together? And it just seems a little bit disjointed to me at the moment. I was just wondering, perhaps you could set my mind at rest about that. Thank you.
I think, if I may, Chair, I mean, I think we note that the RTP has been pursued in a box simply because of the guidance that was available. Equally, bus franchising is in another silo at this stage. I think the challenge we've got is obviously some of that's regional working, as Stuart says, which we think is bearing fruit, notwithstanding the budget issue. I think the budget issue was a severe blow in terms of our aspiration, in terms of actually starting to transform the transport system. And I think, we recognise this potential additional funding as being something that needs to be lobbied for. I think the joining up in terms of bus and local transport, Councillor Cundy, I agree. I mean, I think, there are challenges there that the Welsh Government are pursuing their network, bus network design exercise, and fellow officers have been party to some of those discussions, but ultimately it does seem to be a resource-driven exercise at the moment. So probably does come down to Councillor Percy's observations there, that actually, if there is the ability to invest locally, that would bear some significant fruit and allow us to give us some influence in joining those agendas up, as you say. I think, there is a challenge there. We've not seen as yet the consultation feedback from the bus network consultation that took place a few months ago. We are expecting that in the next 2 to 3 weeks, I believe. So actually, once that's in the public domain, I think that's going to be quite important for us to understand what our residents are actually saying about the bus network and the proposition that's on the table. We did, when we were doing the regional transport plan consultation, receive quite a lot of commentary about the capability of the bus service. And I think, just to echo Stuart's point earlier, it is about getting that picture regionally and being able to join the dots up, as you say, and put some investment in potentially in due course. The mechanism for that is unclear. I think it's fair to say, the bill for the bus services is still working its way through the Senate, but I think there is an opportunity there for the region to see the opportunity to invest in bus and joining some of those dots up, as you say. Is that sorry, I rambled a little bit there, Stuart, but is that a fair summary of where we are?
Yeah, thanks, Lee. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you.
Happy with that, Cundy, yeah?
Yeah, I am. I'm just a little. I suppose I'm still a little concerned about it. There just seems a lot of loose ends at the moment, and I can understand the pressures you're under. And I'm not trying to criticise that. It's just seems it is not connecting yet to my way of thinking. But thank you very much indeed.
Okay, thank you. Is there any more questions on Appendix 1 and 2? Right, can I ask members, is there any questions for Appendix 3, please? No, I can't see any. So I'll just take a recommendation. Can I have a proposer and a seconder, please?
Who's a proposed chair?
Thank you. And thank you, Councillor John. So that's Councillor Cundy and Councillor John. Does any member wish to abstain?
I see no abstentions, Chair.
Thank you. Members, I will now take this as a recommendation. This is supported. Thank you.
Can we
Moving
just
on.
confirm, sorry, Chair, can we just confirm
Sorry.
there are no indications to the contrary, so no one's voting against the recommendation, please? I don't see any votes against the recommendation, Chair, so now I can confirm the recommendation has been supported.
Thank you, Alison. Agenda item 11, forward work programme, pages 151, 156.
I have no updates at this time, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Alison. Agenda item 12, urgent items. I have no urgent items. I'd like to thank all officers and members for today's session, and everybody have a good day. Thank you.
Diolch pawb.
Thank you.
Thank you.